Our service is about to begin, actually, and we're going to begin with some music. We're going to begin with a piece of music by the choral composer, Terry Andrews. It's a piece called All Things Are Quite Silent. And as you'll hear, it's a soft piece that also includes bird sound in it as well. I'm just going to share that with you, and it is about 4 minutes long. And if you can hear it when I start to play it, somebody give me a thumbs up on Zoom. So I always worry that we can't actually hear it, but here it is. Well, that beautiful evocation of the human voice as a spirit voice, and animal voice, a bird voice, begins our service today on living with re-enchantment. And I want to welcome you all today, for everyone who's on Meetup, who hasn't been with us before, for everyone in Edinburgh and everyone here. Welcome to Lewisham Unity in person and online, to a place where we pause to share the space between one week and another, and where we meet to commit ourselves to a future that we want to shape, and where whoever you are, whoever you love, wherever you come from, and whatever it is that you're searching for, you are welcome here today. And a very special welcome to Edinburgh folks who are joining us. I hope that we do this again. We really have enjoyed collaborating with other congregations. And in this meeting house, of course, we can see you up on our wall projected as well. And welcome to, especially to Ailsa Aikenhead, who is going to be playing some Chopin live, which is something we haven't had for a while. But first of all, before we begin all of that, we are going to light our chalice with some chalice lighting words by our Associate Minister, Julio Torres. So let's see, could you pin us, Ben? And I'll light the chalice while Joel says the word.
We light this flame as a beacon of peace, a bastion of hope and abundance. May we remember the interdependence of all people and bring the message to the world that their well-being is our well-being. Your struggle is my struggle, and we are with each other to make it through time. Let this light represent the light in our hearts.
And I'm going to light this second candle, as is our practice here at Lewisham Unity, for the future, for the children. And we've been doing that for people joining us from Edinburgh and Meetup, as following the practice of Extinction Rebellion for all our futures. So our candles here today stand as a witness in our service. And I would also like to invite Tatiana now to lead us in 3 unmuted and settling breaths. Tatiana.
Thank you, Claire. This is a tradition of ours at Lewisham Unity. And so as we're entering this space together with the theme of re-enchantment today, you're all invited to use breath to help you settle. And I have a tricksy little cat who gets in all sorts of places. So our 3 settling breaths in your own time, grounding you, maybe being let out as a sigh if that's what you need at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. And because we have so many people today who are visiting us, coming to us for the first time, and actually we're now more in the meeting house as well. We're now, so I can't count, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8. There's 8 of us here in the meeting house as well. I'd like to invite you to stay unmuted or to unmute yourself and just say hello to everybody. And if you'd like to put in the chat, please use the chat. Please feel free to use the chat to say something about who you are, where you're from, or just to send a message to all of us in this gathered online and in-person community. It's a really nice way for us to actually touch base with everyone who's here. Yeah, you are still pinned, Tatiana. So Tatiana just gave me a message to say, are we still pinned? Do you want to unpin Tatiana? Pin me instead. I'm going to just admit Elizabeth. And what I'm going to do now as well, in the light of our friends from, let me see, we've got people from Newcastle here, at least one person, and lots of people from Edinburgh. I'm going to play Talitha Mackenzie, New York Scottish folk singer, and I'm going to play, it's called Unmute is to mute yourself when you're not speaking, and just use the chat now. It's lovely. Somebody is already, Liz Seaman is already greeting us from Connecticut, USA, which means that you're up really, really early, Liz. I'm going to mute myself now, and I'm going to play Talitha Mackenzie's beautiful lullaby, which is about 3 minutes long. Somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear it. There we are. I'm now unmuted. I'm also going to begin, I just said actually when I was muted that there are many beginnings in a gathering, many beginnings in a service. And one of the ways to begin is with prayer. And this prayer is in a book of spells, a recent book of spells. So I've been thinking about the way in which a spell is also a prayer. And it's by someone that I often quote, the writer Ursula Le Guin, and it's called Come to Dust. Spirit, rehearse the journeys of the body that are to come, the motions of the matter that held you. Rise up in the smoke of Palo Santo, fall to the earth in the falling rain, sink in, sink down to the furthest roots, mount slowly in the rising up to the branches, the crown, the leaf tips, come down to earth as leaves in autumn, to lie in the patient rot of winter, rise again in spring's green fountains, drift in sunlight with the sacred pollen, to fall in blessing. All earth's dust has been life, held soul, is holy. I feel I need to say amen after that as well, I think. This morning is a service of reflection on what it means to be re-enchanted. A big welcome to our friends in Edinburgh also has to include a sense of where we are today, because our autumn theme at Lewisham Unity is about journeys, steps across the threshold of winter, journeys towards change, towards a better future that we want to see, journeys alone, journeys together, and journeys of the spirit. How late the daylight edges towards the northern night, as though journeying in a blue boat, gilded in a mussel shell, with slung from its mast a lantern like our old idea of the soul. The Scottish poet Kathleen Jamie's prayer or poem on the Northern Light. We're going to end today with a blessing that's also a prayer by Billy Bragg, funnily enough. What is that sound? Oh, sorry, we've got all kinds of other spirit voices speaking to us in the meeting house today. Live music from Ailsa, some jazz at the end from Archie Shepp and Jason Moran, and readings by Mary Oliver and Wendell Berry. Anne is going to hold our candles here. And because today is a little bit about magic, a little bit about sacred, a little bit about social, a little bit about future, a little bit about past, and a little bit, or perhaps a bit, about what a Unitarianism might mean if it becomes the work of enchanted activism. After all, what do we do with our one wild and precious life, as Mary Oliver called it? And I'm going to put up her poem here now for you. I'm going to share that. My very complicated technical setup here. Here we go. Here we go. Here is Mary Oliver's poem. And I think that it's one that you all may know quite well. But it seems to me that this poem is, at least in part, about enchantment, about prayer, and in a sense, about spells. Earlier on, I played that choral music by Kerry Andrews, which ends up with people singing bird sounds, as if what's around us are the spirits of a world that is itself animated. And when I went back and read this poem by Mary Oliver, who made the world, she says, who made the swan and the black bear, who made the grasshopper, I felt that that sense of spirit is in this poem. So I'm just going to read it while you can read it on here. Who made the world? Who made the swan, the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who's flung herself out of the grass, the one who's eating sugar out of my hand, who's moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who's gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? We're going to come back to those words as well a little bit later. And before that, I'm going to talk, and I feel a little bit scared about doing this today, actually, because it's kind of quite a big thing I've decided to take on, the idea of enchantment. And I'm going to go straight into it, and then we're going to have some music after that from Ailsa, and a moment of reflection and meditation. But I'm going to talk now about enchantment and re-enchantment. And I'm going to begin, if you can see this, with this book, little quote from this book. These are two books I've been reading. One by Sharon Blackie, The Enchanted Life, and one by Keith Hebton, The Re-Enchanted Activist. I'm going to put this one down because I could say something about that later. But to kind of open up this idea of Unitarianism as re-enchantment, I'm going to read something from Sharon Blackie's pretty wonderful book, actually. I found this really interesting. So this is what she says. And in a way, this is also part of thinking about our journeys through Halloween, through kind of Samhain, which we celebrated last week, the presence of so many leaders in Glasgow to try to think through or resist the thinking through of creating a future that we want to shape, that really supports human flourishing. And in that light, Sharon Blackie says, what was missing from my life for so many years, and what's still missing from the lives of so many of us, is an ongoing sense of meaningful participation in a world which we believe matters, which we maybe even hold to be sacred. Most of us experience moments that are rich with meaning in our lives, but how many of us feel that the very fabric of our lives is woven from such moments? How many of us occupy a ground of being in which reverence and respect for an animated world around us overwhelms the cultural programming which tells us that our individual human lives are the only things that matter, where wonder, not knowledge, is the foundation of possibility, and mystery is something to sit with, not to solve. Wonder, curiosity, mystery, imagination, all are key constituents of enchantment. Cultivating them is essential to living an enchanted life. And it takes me straight back to Mary Oliver's grasshopper, who she watches with her large and complicated eyes, washing her face, and she gives you a sense that she too is an old world. So bear with me for a minute while I just introduce something that's almost worthy of a seminar, but it won't last too long. So some of you may be well aware already, and I actually learned this during my master's degree in theology, that in or about 1904, the German sociologist Max Weber came up with a proposition that we live in a disenchanted world. And what he meant by that was that we live in a rational, bureaucratic, modern world in which we train for jobs, we count our calories, we exercise, we fill in tax forms, and we inhabit an orderly, clock-minded, tidy world cut off from spirit. That was almost 120 years ago, and it kind of became a key idea that's influenced lots of people, because no matter how atheistic or even secular people are, many people recognize what Weber identified, perhaps no more acutely than now, when we know that we have to face problems of ecological and climate destruction, and that our rational, developmental, productive, growth-focused, exploitative capitalist societies have wreaked havoc on the earth. But we don't know how to find the tools to change that. What we do know is that tools that got us here won't get us out. But if this is the disenchanted world, what would an enchanted world look like? And that's actually where Sharon Blackie begins. So thinking back to those voices in Kerry Andrews' beautiful choral piece, An Enchanted World is Full of Spirits. In many ways, it refers to an old world, and not that old either. It is a world that some Indigenous people still inhabit, a world in which the land, trees, wells, and rivers are sacred, where the spirits of the dead are approachable at times, and where life is lived with an attention to life's cycles, to an acceptance of death, and with rich and powerful rituals to honor our passage through this world and out of it. It wasn't by any means a perfect world, but it was and is a world in which people's sense of individuality is tempered by the responsibilities and systems associated with belonging. A world in which soul and spirit are not out of place, in which time is more cyclical than it is progressive. But it isn't our world, as Weber pointed out, though fragments of it continue. And we touch fragments of it here in spiritual community and in many other places. We are the children of the Enlightenment, as we say, of individuality, of curiosity, of change, of progress, of human rights, and above all, of freedom, the freedom to be who we want to be. And Unitarianism itself was born right there, in the descent from established routines and creeds, and from patriarchy, though that challenge still goes on, in the desire for personal freedom and the curiosity to create a new future informed by science and new social practices. But the problem with the world of secular citizenship, of productive, rational freedom, of industrial practices, of extraction and consumption, is it's brought wealth, change, and freedom, and it's also eviscerated, exploited, and colonized the world. And when people say that capitalism is the problem, I think that's part of what they're saying. We no longer live in an old, timeless, enchanted world. But in some ways, we'd like it back. Because as the writer Amin Maalouf has said, freedom makes orphans of us all. And in our disenchanted world, we suffer fear, loneliness, stress, anxiety, and disappointment. Our highly individualistic consumer societies have been oppressive towards other peoples and to the earth itself, to the point where we now feel we are on the edge of destruction. You don't know what you do does is another little phrase that I've quoted often from Rebecca Solnit. And it means that we should carry on being spiritual and practical activists, even when we feel that we don't know that it works. But you don't know what you do does works in other ways as well. And we have extracted just about as much as we can from the earth without knowing that what would happen was that our climate would warm and that one day all of that would run out. So the conundrum that we live in is, in order to get to a better future, we need to re-enchant the world, but we don't want to give up our personal choice or our hard-won freedoms or our individuality or the freedom to be who we are that we value so much. We want to return to a holistic sense of full participation in the material, natural, social, sacred world we live in as the people we are and not as the people of the past. Unitarianism itself was born in dissent, as I said, committed to reason and rationalism. And Unitarians fostered in the 18th and 19th centuries new social ideas, science, medicine, women's rights. Unitarians founded the first secular university, London University. The first president of a London University college, Elizabeth Jesser Reid, who was the head of Bedford College, was a Unitarian. London University was the first place to give women degrees, and they were Unitarians. And they did many other progressive things along the way. And they took part in the bad, in exploitation, taking profits from slavery, exploitation of the earth itself. It was founded in inquiry and curiosity and conversation and commitment to engaging with new ideas. And it was about the way in which those new ideas, those productive, rational, bureaucratic new careers have also been part of the degradation of the world in which we live. And we can't now get away from that at all. Unitarianism has been committed, though, to a generative idea of what religious insight might be. It's got a very strong humanist side, a side that's about human flourishing, human spiritual flourishing. And to touch on in any way and to be part of spiritual community is to know that we are always more than the sum of our parts, that the sacred matters, and that without it, we're missing out on the tools that can accompany us over this critical threshold that we face. We know that we have to hold destructive human behavior to account. And to do that, we might need to hold this world in which we live sacred, not hold on to the rational self, but the experiential self. The self alive to the spirit voices around us, if we like. And all that means, really, and we talked last week very much about that metaphorical idea that the veil between what is and what lies beyond grows thin at certain times of year as the light fades in the north and we pass through the threshold that we now mark with a return to Greenwich Mean Time. But simply that we understand the world around us is alive, that all of us die, and that every species faces the possibility of species death. The world comes first, and it won't support us if we don't hold it sacred. It's not a new idea in any way. And there are thinkers now and in the past who have been committed to that idea. The great Unitarian thinker Buckminster Fuller, James Lovelock, who gave us the idea of Gaia, and all those people who are rewilding, who are active, who are asking us to let go of progress and growth and pay attention to the way in which the natural world is telling us about the vast changes resulting from extractivism. So The new enchantment is not the one we left behind because we need freedom, but the one we go towards, and the one that we here, all of us, can help to recreate as a result of reflecting on what's happened to us collectively and going towards our spiritual commons, including our spiritual commons as the highest value. Which brings me to this man, Keith Hebden, who's a minister, actually, a green minister, if you like. And he says, he engages with the idea that we have to lose ourselves now to find ourselves, to understand ourselves as transformative, transitional, and in a process of constant change, that the very self we stand for may not suit us anymore, that we can rediscover ourselves in an activism that grows from our values, our ethics, and our commitments. And I would say that that takes a village, a spiritual village, a community committed to combining the search for an expansion of inner awareness with effective social action and feeling one's true identity in both. And that's a quote I've used many times from Ursula Le Guin. A community committed to combining the search for an expansion of inner awareness with effective social action and feeling one's true identity in both. I love Mary Oliver's poem, where she says that she's been in the fields all afternoon. And she has that great rhetorical question: what else should I have done? What are we going to do with our one wild, precious lives? The implication in her poem is that joy underpins all of that, and that the experience of being in the world is worth being here for. I think I'm a minister because I think that religion can help us to give a sense of ultimate belonging, that what we do in the world and where we are matters. And that if we allow curiosity and a sense of pilgrimage and journey to flow through us towards new being, and we allow spirituality itself to transform and change like everything else, then we're part of the change. And that somewhere in that, there, oh gosh, I'm finding this very emotional as I say this, and somewhere in that there's God too. If we imagine that God, like our sense of self, of who we are, even our genders can change, that our journey and our sense of sacred is a process of experiencing time and place and being, and that God is simply that which is being made all the time in the space between us, in the creative generosity of what we do together. The sacred, the enchantment, the enchanted, the meaningful might be found in intention and attention, which is what the great thinker Simone Weil called prayer, undivided attention, the tuning in and listening to the world, moving in faith, in trust, in joy from that moment. As Wendell Berry says, how quietly I begin again from this moment. Looking at the clock, I start over. So much time has passed and is equaled by whatever split second is present from this moment. This moment is the first. And I end with Keith Hebden's words that to be enchanted is simply to let compassion connect our mysticism with our practical action. Actually, I think that's what Ursula Le Guin said as well. We are enchanted because we see, lose, and find ourselves in the broken world around us and participate with it, conspire with it for the common good. And he says of his own book that its purpose is to invite you to join in with this experiment, to create spiritual habits that lead to mystical experiences that re-enchant activism. Amen. And thank you for listening. Thank you for that. Because I think that for me, over the next year as a minister, and I've been kind of saying this within our community, actually thinking about what those spiritual tools might be and how we might help to shape them within our community and within ourselves is almost certainly priority sounds like a to-do list, exactly, a kind of rational task list, but has to be at the center of our tuning in to what happens next to all of us. And as everyone from Edinburgh is here today, I think I can probably, I'm not speaking for others, but say that that sense of spiritual commitment that doesn't let our social commitments go, what we call here the space between sacred and social, or where sacred and social meet, is where we want to be and where we want to collaborate with others as well. I see that as a new Unitarianism, and I see that as a very exciting prospect as well. Oh, I think I'm going to take a deep breath after that and a drink of water. Gosh. And I'm going to move into a period of allowing us to experience and experience contemplation and reflection. Not so much to think about all those things that are said, but to kind of feel what's being said. And as part of that, we have Ailsa Aikenhead with us today, who's a musician. I can just see her there, and maybe Ben, we can pin Ailsa. And I would like to invite everyone else here to mute ourselves once Ben's pinned Ailsa, and invite Ailsa to speak, because she's going to unmute herself and speak, because she is going to play us a piece of Chopin. So over to you, Ailsa. And I'm going to mute myself now and invite everyone else to do so.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much for that lovely sermon. I thought that was really beautiful. So I'm going to play you a Chopin nocturne. It's a nocturne in G minor. It starts off with this beautiful kind of dark and melancholy theme, and then in the middle there's this gorgeous Polish chorale. It sounds like people singing, and then back to this beautiful dark theme. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for having me play.
Ailsa unmuted applause. I found that totally extraordinary. Thank you so much. It can be done as well, just so beautifully. Thank you so much, Ailsa. It was a wonderful, wonderful piece of Chopin. Thank you. I'm going to invite you now, after all of that, it seems a beautiful way to enter into a moment or a few minutes of contemplation. And I would like everybody, if you would like to find a comfortable seat, place your feet flat on the ground in a simple but ritualistic way, perhaps, and to have your hands either on your knees or facing down, or if you like to open them to the universe, to place them palms up as well. But to feel yourself here, wherever here is for you, in your own body, with your feet touching the ground and your hands touching your body, perhaps open to the ceiling or the sky. And I would like you to imagine taking yourself to a space that for you is sacred. It changes. It might be that little corner of your bed where you sit against a pillow with a candle, or that space in a park where you stand under a tree that you have visited for many years, or somewhere where you can hear birdsong. I invite you to take yourself now, your spirit self, your virtual self, into that space, spacious or small and cozy, and to let yourself rest there, knowing that we are always held within a world that is alive and ultimately loving. I invite you to begin to follow your breath in and out, to be aware of the way that your breath warms you inside, refreshes you, and brings you life with every breath. And then I just invite you to stay in this space as together we sit in quiet contemplation just for a couple of minutes. I'd like to invite you to open your ears to what's around you, wherever your space is, where you are here now, and to come back to an awareness that we are all here together in this vast shared space that actually stretches from south to north today and from north to south. To bring yourself back, to rub your hands together and just to place them over your eyes. Bring the warmth of your own body to your eyes, to yourself. And open your eyes, if you like, behind your hands, just very gently. Gently bringing yourself back into this space where we are together and where we're just going to continue our service as we begin to do this, to begin to draw it round into a completed circle. And again, those words about the moment from Wendell Berry, how quietly I begin again from this moment. Looking at the clock, I start over. So much time has passed and is equaled by whatever split second is present from this moment. This moment is the first. And with that, I'd like to invite Anne to come and take my place here and host our candles of joy, love, and of hold all of those things here in our gathering. Is present, very, very present today. Our service is now very much coming to a close. And because this is Lewisham Unity, I do want to have a couple of announcements, including the fact that you can donate to Lewisham Unity. Gosh, that's what I want to say, by going to our webpage and clicking on our donate button. We are a very small community. We are committed to sacred social action. We do have asylum seekers living in our house. So anybody who wants to donate to us, it will go towards the work that we want to do to co-create the future that we want to shape. You don't have to do it now. You can do it afterwards, but we do welcome absolutely all donations. And of course, I also want to thank our chair, Anne Howell, who just lit our candles, because Anne has just done an extraordinary job of inspiration and practical action in terms of generating financial support for us as well. So that's been really, really good, and thank you. It's so much appreciated by us in every possible way. I've got a closing blessing, and then we're going to do something that we do here every week, which was we blow out our candles together on Zoom. But I found a closing blessing yesterday from Billy Bragg. I've always liked Billy Bragg, and there was an interview with Billy Bragg in a paper that I get on Saturday in the Financial Times. And one of the questions is about religion always, do you believe in an afterlife? And I thought that Billy Bragg would probably say, absolutely not, I'm a total Marxist materialist. And Billy Bragg instead did not say that. So I'm going to say Billy Bragg's closing blessing, which I really like. So Billy Bragg's closing blessing for us today, gathered here, Edinburgh, all of our other seekers from all over the country, for us here in the meeting house at Lewisham Unity, and all of our Lewisham Unity friends and members online. Billy Bragg has this to say: I believe in the intangibility of existence. Science tells me the universe is 85% dark matter. So if 85% of reality is intangible, I think there's room for other intangibles. Amen. It's very brilliant. And I'd like to invite Anne to come here and help us to blow out our candles together. Right.
feel free to unmute yourself and help me blow out these candles.
Thank you. And of course, that really works too, by the way. That really works as well. And we have just one piece of music that I'm going to finish with today. Whoops. Sorry, I'm just doing tech as I speak. One piece of music that I'm going to finish with today as well. And it has a slight connection to something else, quite spiritual and very commemorative, that happens in November, which is actually Remembrance Day. So a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, at the 100th anniversary of the armistice in 1918, I went to an extraordinary concert in the Barbican by the jazz musician Jason Moran. And he was playing the music of James Earl Europe. And James Earl Europe toured the troops in American troops, French troops, English troops in the First World War, and in many ways brought jazz. It had already started, but he brought jazz to Europe. And it's made me think a lot about You Don't Know What You Do Does. It's one of the unintended consequences of war was people understanding a much more international sense of culture and creative change. James Earl Europe's music is not quite good enough, if you like now. The recordings are very, very old. They're made in the First World War. It's a certain kind of jazz. But Jason Moran is playing the Barbican this Friday, and he's playing with the absolutely wonderful Archie Shepp, who's 84. I'm going to see them. And so this is a lovely kind of early jazz type piece of music, which is 3 minutes long. And it's Archie Shepp and Jason Moran. It's a lovely uplift playing Ain't Misbehaving. And somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear it.
No one to talk with, all by myself. No one to walk with, but I'm myself. Ain't misbehaving, saving my love for you. And I know for certain I don't go out late, nowhere to go. I'm home.
It's hard to unmute. I said, if that's not a spirit voice, I don't know what is. It's a channel to the ancestors and a way of expressing what it means to be fully and humanly alive in this extraordinary world. So thank you all very much for this morning. Thank you, Ailsa. That was extraordinary. We have been privileged to have two extraordinary musicians from Edinburgh, Jack Tate Westwell, who is, when he moved to London, became our accompanist. We've met him in Edinburgh, and you. So we've really loved that. That was fantastic and most beautiful piece of music. Thank you everyone for being here. We could actually, if people want to stay online, we are going to have a cup of coffee here in the meeting house. But also, I don't know. If you want to go. If you'd like to stay online or to write in the chat whether you would like to actually join in a breakout room, then let's just leave it open for 5 minutes and do that. What do we think? Yeah. Any questions?
Yes, also an announcement to, if you would enjoy listening to the sermons again and great services, you can
come over here, Ben.
Yes, you can check us out on everywhere under the sun, Spotify, YouTube, and every single podcast directory. Yeah, if you search for Lewisham Unity Plus without the plus, then you can enjoy listening to the same sermon over and over and over again until it becomes part of you. And yes, also another idea that I want to borrow from another congregation. So yeah, we'll just open a few breakout rooms. If you want to join, you can join. There's no automatic assignment. It's all free.
So, yeah, for those people who are going, goodbye. Have a blessed day. Enjoy your coffee and your lunch and whatever it is that you're doing. That's fantastic. And if people want to stay, then just we'll do some breakout rooms, or we'll just have a chat to you. And thank you for all of the messages in the chat as well. They're absolutely brilliant. I think I can probably certainly say for myself that we would really love to do this again. It's fantastic. Thank you all. Thank you. Oh, so lovely.
And maybe for Edinburgh to lead a service.
Yeah, and for Edinburgh to invite us, that would be really lovely as well.
Where is your congregation located?
Ours? Oh, Barry, hi. We are in South Catford. We're in South London, South East London. Yeah. Where are you, Barry?
I'm in the Hudson Valley in New York State.
Oh, how nice. Oh, that's just pop over. We've also had Unitarians from the Hudson Valley. We had Pat Lamana, who came and did a kind of folk song service with us a couple of years ago. So that's really nice. So you haven't even had breakfast yet?
No, that's why I'm on my bathrobe. When I next visit St. Mark's in Edinburgh, which I've been to several times in person over the years, I will show up with my bathrobe because that's the only way they've seen me for 2 years now.
So you've been attending at St. Mark's for 2 years from the Hudson Valley?
Well, yeah, I've been there in person a number of times, and then via Zoom since the lockdown. So
that's wonderful to hear as well. That's great. And Joan, I know, Joan Cook, who's here from Edinburgh as well. Hi, Joan. Very lovely to see you. And Cal earlier, who's from Newcastle, has kept that in mind today too. It's very lovely.
Yes, this has been the wonderful thing about Zoom, is being able to visit all these places and see old faces and new faces, and it really has created a feeling of community, I think. Yeah,
I think
thank you very much.
Only just begun. Thank you, Joan. Really, really lovely to have you with us as well. That's great.
Well, take care. Bye. Bye.
And have a coffee.
Yes.
That's what we're just going to be doing as well.
Right. You deserve it. You deserve it.
Bye now. That's lovely. Are you going, Barry?
Yep. Goodbye. I will listen to your, I've missed the first part, so I'll listen to it on your recording.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
You.
And Cal, you were first in.
Yes, first in and last out.
It was so nice to meet you, actually.
I really enjoyed it. It's very nice. Thank you very much.
Feel free to come again whenever you like, or and also to contact us if you ever just want to have a chat or a virtual coffee. That's also available.
I've attended a couple of Unitarian meetings in Newcastle upon Tyne.
Have you?
But that was pre-plague, so now things are easing up. Hopefully, they'll be starting again.
I think they're a nice community too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, it's a beautiful meeting place as well.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Art Deco.
Is it?
Yes.
I used to live in York, and we had a beautiful meeting house there as well.
Yeah. I think there's only 3 Art Deco buildings in the whole of Newcastle.
Really? I'm surprised at that, actually. Yeah, that's interesting.
Newcastle got redeveloped.
Yeah. I think they probably were there and they just got easy.
The main one is a cinema called the Tyneside Cinema, an independent art house cinema, which is brilliant.
I used to live in York, and we used to come up to Newcastle
yes.
as well, to do things and see things actually too. So it's a very sort of easy one. So it's good. I'm going to go and get a coffee, but I'm leaving this open. But if I don't see you, well,
nice to speak to you. Say to the next one. You take care now. I'm going out for have a cup of coffee in the plain field outside.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go up there. I think I might switch this off because now nobody else is here. Nobody's here, which is, and in a way, much as I'm happy